Hello everyone. Right now in Romania, Grand Chess Tour event takes place where many top grandmasters compete in each other, except of Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. They do not play, and we are going to analyze today one game from this tournament between Gukesh and Praggnanandhaa. This game was played in the round number 3, and we're interested in the endgame that happened in the game, because right here both of the opponents were short on time, and important decisions should have been made. Transit to the pawn in game or not, to continue playing in game, which you can see on your board. And yeah, both players made some mistakes during the sand game. And by the way, very similar mistake in the pawn in game Alireza Firouzja did in the Norway chess tournament against Magnus Carlsen. He actually lost two pawn in games like this against Magnus. You can check, by the way, the video. It should pop up somewhere on the screen. And let's begin. Right here, both of the opponents in the time trouble. Of course, nobody forced them to go right here, but the game was actually quite even. You can check it if you are interested after it. But right now, Gukesh is down a pawn, but position is definitely holdable. If you great tactical player. You can see that Queen H1 is the mate in threat. And what's the strategy? The strategy is that pawn in game without an extra pawn is a very hard endgame to play. In a lot of situations, it's gonna be lost. But if we have Queen in game with 3 on 2 on one flank, or it's gonna be a Rook in game, it's pretty easy draw, especially for such experienced and strong players like our young Indian grandmasters. Entered here, good move would be king g1, because let's say after the check we can easily defend with rook f1. As I said, queen in game would be drawish, we want to avoid pawn in game. If somehow queens get traded, we also don't mind, because rook in game 3 on 2 easy to hold, because even if more pawns we trade, easier it is to survive in the same game. But in this position, Gukesh, who's by the way soon gonna play a World Championship match against Dean Lorraine, and I guess he really need to work on endgames to prevent such mistakes in the future. He decided to play Queen f3. You can say, okay, stop, stop, stop. You said trading queens would be fine, rook in game would be equal, and that's true. But Praggnanandhaa sat on this position for a while. He was thinking, despite the fact he was low on time, he decided to take. He spent almost all his time. As I understand, he got only 3 seconds left, and then time increment saved him. And after rook f3, he played rook f5, trading rooks, and it already pawn in game, and already smells not great. And in my opinion, such strong players Gukesh should have, really been suspicious about this position, because going to the pawn in game instead of trying to hold this position is a very responsible decision, and you cannot calculate it very easily. So in such situation, of course, was better to hold on, try to find less forcing way of play, because queen of 3 it's like burning all the breaches, all in, like all or nothing, literally. And after rook f5, you might object and say, okay, there are 3 islands, pawns doubled, what are chances? And probably from the distance, our contender of the World Championship match also thought. Entered here in the game, king f2 was played while trying to centralize the king, because if king reached such active spot, it would be great. King g6, king f3, king g5. Right now, black's king more active, and this is a key in such endgames. For white, playing move like h4 would be rather a commitment and weakness, and the king could try to detour everything and win. So Gukesh plays h3 right here, challenging Pragg whether he can find the solution to this problem or not. He had 2 minutes on the clock, and right here the final mistake was made, because this endgame is winning for black. But Pragg decided to play king f6, and after it, computer shows zeros and position was equal. We'll see right now how it happened. Like, Gukesh activated the king, traded pair of pawns, and despite the fact that black had an opposition, right now it's really hard to move on, because, for example, after f6, king f3, logically we want to outflank, but it would be a mistake because the king lifts up, and the game ended in a draw, after some dancing, yeah, it wasn't that hard of a burden to hold this position, I think. And right now this is classical opposition, enough correspondent squares to follow the king, and opponents shake hands, finish the game in a draw. So going back to our position, what was better to do? We don't wanna really go back with the king unless we are invited or have no choice. Therefore, h5 would be a good move. And right now, white very limited in different options. It's either h4 or try to move with the king back. Going back with the king like this would be rather a mistake, because after f4 we can get the position almost exact the same structure about triangulation as Alireza Firouzja got against Magnus, and again video is in description, and yeah, he got crushed. So for white it's a bad choice. King e3 seems to be more or less alright, because h4 is not really an option because our king can get active, but f4 strikes very hard. Taking will lead to disaster because pawn falls in this position, and if not taken, again, this many times mentioned endgame with a triangulation gonna happen. If you do not understand what I mean, let's say schematically. Let's say we go here, here, and like first of all we can get the opposition. In the worst case we can try to push the pawn, and like that's what we can reach at some moment. And for the full instructions, follow this video with Magnus Carlsen and Reza Firuja. So the only remaining option is h4. Right now black needs to decide where do we want to go. h6 looks lame, so we need to pick between these two. King f6 would be worse, because then king can try to go to f4 and activate himself. So let's say after king f4, if king goes here, our pawn drowning like some Titanic. If king g6, also king is extremely strong. Therefore, elimination method, we need to go here. For white, it would be pretty bad to go king f4, because it helps black to get the opposition. Right now white is forced to retreat, and our king can be on a very active spot. And right now we can try to play, let's say, f4, giving up a pawn, but trying to threaten to pick up the pawn later. And after f6, again, white is in the Zugzwang. You can choose left, you can choose right, but in either case, you're gonna lose. So therefore for white, it's a pretty bad idea to go forward. Therefore we can wait. Let's say play king e3. And right now, this was probably the tricky point for Pragg, because until this moment, I guess both of the players came. Because right now, playing king f6, we already know, not good because of king f4, white grabs an opposition, white controls everything. Giving up a pawn we don't want, playing f6 also leads to the Zugzwang. King is forced to move, pawn is falling, and it's a draw. Therefore, again, elimination method. And I get that in the time trouble it's hard to see from the distance, but it's not, let's say, me, who is not, I don't know, super master of calculations. I'm not 2700 GM. And I guess for the players who trying to climb to the top, such calculations, I mean, definitely possible to be executed. And the problem is that king f4 no longer possible anyway, king f3 waiting move, and only now we play f6. Because after king f4, king g6, we defended the pawn, king is forced to move, and there is a direct highway for our king to go to the center. And that's it, game is lost. Right here we need to show some precise play, because after king e6 again, we need to dodge this trap. So after king e7, and a little bit of waiting, we'll finally get this position when we activate our king. And let's say after playing f4 gf, king d5, white again in trouble because white out of moves. And let's say after f5, king f5. We win the pawn. If king f3, we step by step pushing the king away from the main zone, and we win the pawn on f4. And after a king d3, right now white grabbed an opposition, but extra pawn move helps us to win the game. After f5, black takes a position back in his hands, and again all the pawns falling. Was it a time trouble, or maybe I mean, atmosphere was nervous, but both of the players, in my opinion, kind of took this raid from Alireza because the pawn endgame is not the hardest endgame. It implies a lot of calculations, but this endgame, let's say, has nothing in common, for example, with the endgame of Garry Kasparov that you can see right now on the screen, that he played in his last game in Classic against Topalov, and after it, he retired. Not because of this game, but it was his last game, and this pawn game was really complex. Right here, options are very limited, and I think both players kind of, I mean, underestimated opportunities of both. Comment what you think about this game. Did you see all the complications? Do you think it was possible to lift it? And let's say some other players like Hikaru Nakamura or Magnus Carlsen would be capable of finding it in the real game? Was the time trouble the main reason why both the opponents made these mistakes? Or was it rather nervosity and, I mean, tension between players during the game? And like, subscribe, it would be very well appreciated. See you in the next episode. Goodbye.